Jeff, ready to go?
Mm-hmm.
Let's get to Jeff Paterson here from Rogers Arena. Jeff, we were just explaining practices take on a bit of a different look in the Stanley Cup playoffs, but you tell us, what have you seen there this morning?
Yeah, not much. 9 skaters and 2 goaltenders, and one of them wasn't Thatcher Demko. So, yeah, I mean, load management. I think guys have been playing through things down the stretch. We saw a little bit of load management in Game 82 in Winnipeg, and there's also a little bit of gamesmanship in as much as you don't want to tip your hand. If somebody needs a maintenance day, if there's only 9 guys out on the ice, it's hard to deduce who's missing for what reason. So I think a lot of that. But ultimately, I think Rick Tocchet's pretty happy that it's the way his team played, got better as the night went along. And, yeah, there's some things to clean up, certainly. But I think all things considered, pretty solid start to the 2024 Stanley Cup playoffs for the Vancouver Canucks.
Yeah, it also makes it difficult on lineup changes and line combinations. More on that in a moment. But first, Jeff, we're just sitting here talking the first Stanley Cup playoff game in this city in 9 years and more than 3,000 days. I'm interested in your experience and what you felt of the day in the game last night.
Yeah, I mean, a beautiful day. Sun was shining as I drove downtown to the game. Canuck jerseys on every street corner. It had that feel that the playoffs were back. And obviously, once in the building, I mean, 9 years of pent-up emotion and frustration and excitement and all of that and the intros. And really, it started with warm-up and late arriving crowd, because it was funny. You can tell when there's a towel draped over every seat. You can see who has taken their towel and who hasn't. And for warm-up, I thought, wow, I kind of expected that more people might be in the building. But by the time the national anthems rolled around and the puck was ready to drop, seats were filled. And it was terrific. And again, a bit of a slow build. Obviously, didn't have any goals to cheer about in the first period, but lots of big hits. The Canucks with 20 hits, so a hit a minute in that first period of play. And then the Lindholm goal got people into this game, got the Canucks on the scoreboard, settled things down a little bit because, you're fine when you're down 1-0. But you're also one bounce away from being down 2-0. And we know that the excitement can turn to angst in a hurry. So I thought the Lindholm goal was important. It was important for him. It was important for the Vancouver Canucks. It's kind of funny the day after. And again, I think people forget what it sounds like when the roof's about to blow off this place. But I saw a lot of people saying, loudest this has been in a decade. And I call BS on that entirely, because how quickly we forget the Sedin swan song and their farewell. And that night, this place popped. And again, it didn't have the pregame pomp. I mean, everybody knew what it was building to, and then to have the storybook finish. But when Daniel scored from Henrik in overtime, that was as loud as we've heard this place since 2011. And so just remember, don't forget the Sedins. They did a lot for this team in this city, and people seem to want to forget that night and just go back in time. But in terms of, their entrance and going back to U2 and all of that, like, that was incredible. I mean, look, this organization does game presentation well. They haven't had a chance to do it in 9 years for the playoffs, but, the pregame videos and some of the hype material and all of that, and to have towel power back. Yeah, I mean, that part of it was fantastic. And then to have the team respond the way it did in the third period obviously capped a remarkable and a memorable night of hockey here at Rogers Arena.
Why did it take them 2 periods to find, a real traction scoring wise? Was it just getting their feet wet and maybe absorbing the moment and then getting after it, do you think? Or were they being outplayed to some degree? Were they being figured out a little bit?
I think the early strategy clearly was to try to take the body at every turn. Puck be damned. I mean, they had 20 hits and 4 shots in the first period, and they had an early power play, and you wanted to believe it was going to be a difference maker, and it wasn't. They only had the 1 shot on goal on that power play, and only 2 shots in 2 power plays on the night. So there's an area that continues to be a little bit of a sore spot for the hockey club. But it felt like the puck was secondary at times in that first period, but all with this idea of taking the body wherever possible. A hit in the first period, it can have an impact in game 4, 5, 6 in this war of attrition. And so, no problem with the strategy. But we also saw Toronto on Saturday try to employ that strategy, and the Leafs clearly got distracted, and it didn't work for them. So, 4 shots in the first period. Canucks come out in the second. They have 4 shots in the first 2 minutes. They have a goal. Pia Suter had a really good opportunity as well. And so I think they recognize that the puck is still central to all that goes on in this game of hockey. And at some point, you got to do some good things with it. But, again, when I look at the way the game unfolded, yeah, they gave up the first goal. They fall behind 2-1. But I thought they showed poise, patience. They didn't look like they panicked in any way. And, we've trotted out that Canucks record all season, guys, about when they take a lead in the third period. Like, the third period leads do matter most of the time. And so I think that's a layer to this as well, that the Canucks didn't seem discouraged, stuck with it. And then obviously the 2 goals in 12 seconds turned this game on its ear. And who knows, maybe it turns the series on its ear when all is said and done. But that was important for the Vancouver Canucks. But I just think, like, the underlying numbers showed, like, JT Miller's line absolutely crushed the Predators. They just didn't have anything to show for it. And I think that was going to be one of the storylines if the Canucks came out on the short end of the scoreboard on night number 1 was, all right, territorially they played well, but you got to have something to show for the, the fruits of your labor. And ultimately, in that third period, they were able to come through and get the goals they needed to win this thing by a score of 4-2.
The only concern I've heard from anybody is Pettersson, and not that he played poorly, just that didn't really show himself in there. That's the only concern I've really heard. I mean, do they want the special teams to play to perfect? Yeah, they do. But the most tangible concern is Pettersson. What'd you see there?
Yeah, not much. And it's a continuation of what we've seen over the last 15 to 20 games. 1 goal in 14 hockey games now for the Canucks. That's not exactly getting it done. But, this game reminded me a lot of the game in Edmonton there in the final week of the regular season, where top-end guys ultimately didn't carry the day for the Vancouver Canucks, and some of their depth came through, and it was Casey DeSmith in goal that night. Obviously, it was Thatcher Demko here. But, Pia Suter scored against the Oilers. He scored in this game. Dakota Joshua sealed that one into an empty net, and he had his 2 goals here. So, I think that's an area that the Canucks feel that they have an edge on the Nashville Predators is depth and lower in the lineup. But in saying that, too, if they're able to dictate the matchups on home ice, you'd think that should free up Elias Petterson. And it is remarkable, guys, to think that an 89-point producer in the regular season has to surprise us now in some way. But that's kind of where I am with him, that if he has a big night offensively, it is going to come as a, like, oh, it's great, but I didn't see it coming because just the breadcrumbs here over the last 6 weeks or so. And last night he got outplayed. He and his line got outplayed. They were on the ice for that first goal. He gets waved out of the circle. A lot of that was on Lafferty as he and Höglander both get out to the point, and they leave Zucker all alone over there on the wall with too much time and space. So, yeah, I mean, that line has to be better. You expect more from Elias Petterson. That there's a better player in there, but, how many times am I going to come on with you guys? And that is going to be the storyline. Like, I hope it changes. I hope it changes for his sake. I hope it changes for the club's sake and the market's sake. But right now, night 1 of the playoffs just looked an awful lot like the last 20 games of the regular season for EP40.
You think Mikheev's going to stay there, Jeff? I know they moved Mikheyev to the line instead of Lafferty. Do you think Mikheev's going to stay there for game 2?
That's why I came to practice. I wanted to find out. Rick Tocchet not tipping his hand. But, yeah, look, I think there are some tweaks, and I think that is one of them. In fact, I was a little surprised that he went with Lafferty on that line to start. I would have thought that would have been a plan B, that if Mikheyev wasn't working, you give him an opportunity, and then that you got Lafferty waiting in the wings. Now, Lafferty didn't do an awful lot. He drew an early penalty on Colton Sissons, but there wasn't a whole lot to his game, I didn't think. And so do you come back with him? Do you go with Mikheyev? Are you gaining if you do? The other one is PDG got the nod and a little bit of veteran experience. Not that he had a vast playoff resume, but over Vasily Podkolzin. Giuseppe takes a penalty in the third period. He was out there for the power play goal that Ryan O'Reilly scored, and he had 2 hits on a night when the Canucks had a whole bunch of them, but it wasn't like he was leading the hit parade there. So I think the door is open if Rick Tocchet wanted to just let Vasily Podkolzin experience playoff hockey on the outside and plug him in, but conventional hockey wisdom so often is sticking with a winning lineup as well. I think we'll see Podkolzin in this series, but I wouldn't be shocked if Tocchet comes back with the same lineup that produced a victory, but, will he come back with the same deployment of those players? I don't know. We'll probably have to wait to see if there's a full morning skate on Tuesday ahead of game number 2.
Dakota Joshua, what do you make of playoff D? And I'll ask you our poll question. Pay the man. Is he indispensable going forward, Jeff?
Yeah, it feels like it. Look, hand injuries or any injury, when you miss a quarter of the season, quite often can derail a season. Like, guys that are having a good year sometimes just don't get it back. They're out too long. And he has been terrific. And he showed some signs of that in that Easter Sunday game when he scored twice, including the between the legs goal against the Anaheim Ducks. Like, that just looked like a guy that was confident, returning to the lineup in his second game, and hasn't let up. 7 goals in the 11 games now since he's been back in the lineup from the hand injury. So he's come through with big goals. He's come through with timely goals. He's scored in a bunch of different ways. And that sequence was just exquisite, starting with Lindholm getting into the forecheck. I mean, that's Jeremy Lauzon. We've talked about this guy leading the NHL in hits this year, and yet, Lindholm didn't look apprehensive at all. In fact, he gets in, takes the body, takes the puck, gets it to Garland, and Garland threads the needle. And then, I think it would have been pretty easy for Joshua to try to pull that puck to his backhand. And yet, again, speaks to confidence that he saw a sliver of light. And Saros isn't the biggest goaltender, able to get it up over the shoulder on the short side, sort of back against the grain. So he's feeling it. And he looks like a guy that's built for playoff hockey. I know Rick Tocchet talked about he doesn't know how good he can be. Early in the season, Tocchet wasn't saying that about Dakota Joshua, but he's taken the criticism and the tough love to heart and has made himself a heck of a hockey player who's going to make himself a heck of a lot of money now. And so, yes, I think I pay the guy. I mean, you got to have your limits, obviously, in a cap world, but I think that's a bet I would make on a player that, look, Tocchet said at the end of last year, and he'd only worked with Dakota Joshua for a handful of months, and he said, I think he can be a 20-goal scorer. I kind of scoffed at that because he was playing 12 minutes a night. And, I think Tocchet liked the idea of this big body that he could mold and shape and get him to win his battles. But I just didn't know if there was enough finish there for him to truly be a 20-goal guy. Well, he missed, a quarter of the season, and he still finishes with 18, and now he's 20 on the year, if you include the first two in the playoffs here. So Tocchet saw something there and has continued to, build this guy up. And he's turned into, a really good hockey player who I think has more to give. And that's the exciting part. And it's going to come at a price, no doubt. But I do think that that's a check that I'm willing to write for a player that can help this group for the next bunch of years.
I'm sure Elias Lindholm, if he was told that he would play with Connor Garland and Dakota Joshua when he was traded, he'd be like, really?
I know.
And now he's in the best spot possible is Elias Lindholm playing with these two guys.
Yeah, and it is funny too. A healthy body can do a lot of good things, and clearly Lindholm was grinding through something and trying to play through something, and then they shut him down, and now that looks like the prudent play based on the first night of the playoffs because he gets in. Look, the goal was a bad goal. Let's be honest. That's a goal that UC Saros has to stop, and Thatcher Demko doesn't give up that goal last night. That's in a tight game. That had to be a little deflating for the Predators. Quite frankly, they'd done well to build the lead, and then a goal from distance like that right through Saros, but Lindholm puts the puck on the net. Good things happen there. It was more of the play to set up Joshua on his goal. Late game, he's out there. And talked about it post-game as well, guys, that, the first power play of the night, O'Reilly scores, and Teddy Luger's in the penalty box. So there's one of your best penalty killers. Now, it was Di Giuseppe and Suter who were the forwards out on the ice for that goal. But after that, they killed off the remaining three, and those were pivotal because the Preds had a chance to extend their lead. If they do, maybe a different night. Lindholm's such a big part of the penalty kill, late game protecting leads. He's been doing that. He just didn't have the offense to his game. Last night, he levels up and produces offense as well. Looked like a pretty complete hockey player and a guy that really can help the Canucks pull on the rope in the right direction here.
Well, Jeff, we know you'll be in Nashville later this week. Just take us through the week and what it's going to look like for the Canucks. I anticipate they'll travel Wednesday and not after the game Tuesday. And then when will you be there reporting?
Yeah, both teams are expected to travel Wednesday. It's tough to make travel plans in the playoffs. I mean, you could get 4 overtimes, right? And so obviously that impacts. So I think, I know the Predators for sure had always planned to overnight here after game 2 and then fly home. There's the extra day between games. You lose 2 hours going that way. So that'll be, an impact on both teams, but certainly for the Canucks having to adjust. So the Canucks will go in Wednesday. They'll have a full practice there on Thursday. And then we'll see about Friday in terms of a game day skate. Now, Sunday is an early start. It's 4:00 local in Nashville, 2 here in Vancouver. So there won't be a morning skate that day. But complicating matters is the fact that it's the Nashville Marathon on Sunday. And apparently, as I'm learning, this is one of the most popular marathons in the United States. It's the rock and roll marathon. People dress up to run. I will not be doing the marathon, but I do wonder if that's some foreshadowing of we're going to get like the overtime game on Sunday. Maybe we'll have the Nashville Marathon in the morning and the Nashville Marathon in the afternoon as well. We'll see how that all plays out. But it's going to be a busy city in the downtown core. But Nashville's always hopping at the best of times, so it'll just kind of add a couple of layers, I would imagine, to the experience. I'm going in on Thursday, and certainly we'll be there for games 3 and 4, and we'll do rink wide, and we'll join you guys and anybody that'll have me. I'd be happy to talk hockey from Music City, USA. So excited. We'll see kind of where the mood of the series is, obviously, if Predator fans have to boost their team up, or if they're going to see a team that gets the split here in Vancouver and comes back having earned home ice advantage as the series moves forward.
Hey, you're not running, but can we get you to dress up like a rock star and do some social media content around Nashville on Saturday?
An Elvis Pompadour or something?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm only taking carry-on, I think, so I'm not sure that I'll have room to stuff a costume in there. But
you don't think they have costume shops in Nashville?
Matt will give you his credit card.
We'll give you my credit card if you do the social media.
Looking forward to it, Jeff.
Take it under advisement.
And great that here at the Nation Network, Sekeres and Price, we're getting you on the road to cover this series. So very pleased about that. Jeff, thank you for this. We'll catch up later in the week.
All right, guys. Thanks.
A few things there that I wanted to pick up on. You know, I think we talked about Thatcher Demko and how the injury might be a blessing in disguise, that he missed a month and was rested up for the playoffs. I think the same may prove true for Elias Lindholm. He has been very good upon getting back from injury, as is Joshua. And like, think of it, Blake, those are three exceptional turns for the Canucks, that players of this kind of import have been able to come right off of injuries with sort of no lag whatsoever. And in some cases, Joshua keeping up the great work he was doing before he broke his hand in that fight in Chicago against Mackenzie Entwistle. Demko same goes, but Lindholm's even improved since the rest.
I even thought, Brock Besser was good too. He was given some maintenance days, took the last game off. I think they've done their very best. There's only so much you can do. It's a rough and tumble game. There's going to be a lot of injuries, but they've managed to get started here relatively unscathed. I mean, it's 82 games. You can only control this so much, but they've done a pretty good job of it. And they're putting, I think, as best a foot forward as you possibly can, save for if you're stashed on LTIR for a few months.
Thanks for joining, everybody. If you're new to this program, 11:30 a.m. Pacific weekdays, we go live on many of the social media platforms. And of course, later in the day, you're going to want to look for the podcast. And of course, subscribe to wherever you get your podcasts, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. We'll talk to you Tuesday.